And we are now recording. So welcome everyone to this afternoon's webinar. Let me start out by saying my disclaimer that this is a training video. It should be used for training purposes only, that no real students or data is shared in this video as we use a sandbox server full of fake students, fake information, and any likeness to any real person is purely coincidental. So in today's webinar, we're really going to kind of go all the way back and talk about importing and exporting and updating data inside of the SIS. We have seen with the latest table that we added of the graduation pathway that when we provided the directions of importing that data in, a lot of people made some mistakes in that data and tried to re-import the original file in, which of course does not update the data. It just creates a new record of data. So that let me know that we needed to go back to the basics, go back to the beginning, and have a conversation about how importing data works, how these tables work inside of SIS so that you can make sure you have clean and not duplicated data that can cause issues throughout the state, because right now we actually do have quite a few districts that have multiple entries of graduation pathway on students that are causing issues in their data. So first I want to go to the Alabama PowerSchool website. On the Alabama PowerSchool website, at the very bottom on the left-hand side, there is this updating student data page. And this is where we put all of our information on how to do the mass updates that y'all ask for so often when we have new fields put inside of PowerSchool. So I'm actually just going to use the graduation pathway. And here is this one, the entering graduation pathway for students directions. I'm going to use this one just as an example, but I want you to know that what I'm going to go over with this today is going to apply to every one of these documents where we have to enter information and we have to go to one of these child tables off of the student extensions. When we have things that we need to update that are directly on the students table under most student extensions, we can do it very easily through student field value updates. But when it goes onto those child tables, which most of our compliance tables do, then the only way to really update them in mass is by doing an import with them. Most people on this call, I can see by the attendee list, very well know about imports because many of you have imported quite a few tables in there. And all of the rules for this, whether it's an extension table or it's a core table that you're going to import into, these rules still apply in how things update and how things import and how you can even delete if need be inside of there. So if I were to go to this set of directions right here, on the graduation pathway instructions, it's going to start out about just how do you use the UI to update it on one student. But when you scroll down, I always then give you information on how to update or how to enter it for large groups of students. So for example, if you wanted to update the entire senior class at one time. Now, most of these directions, especially for our state compliance tables, is going to say in order to do this in mass, you must use code set IDs for the graduation pathways, and you must use your district's IDs, and we go through Data Export Manager about how to export those out. One thing to note is that code set IDs, that's what most of our drop downs are inside this program, are always unique to one district. So your code set ID for the alternate achievement pathway is different from my code set ID for the alternate achievement pathway, and it's different from your neighbor's alternate achievement pathway. So you have to make sure that anytime you are doing any of this with the code set IDs, that you have yours selected and don't use the ones that are in my screenshots. Now, to actually update it via a file import, it states right here that you are going to have to create a spreadsheet. In this spreadsheet, you're going to need 4 columns for this graduation pathway data. Notice the identifier column that we're going to have is the student's DCID. So you're going to need to begin by exporting the student DCID and basic identifying fields from the student's table. Now, one of the things that we do see quite often is that even though the directions will say student's DCID, we have people that are building spreadsheets and they're putting in the student's SSID. Be very careful. Guys, also have conversations with who you are giving import and export rights to in your district, because I'll be completely honest with you. When the directions say DCID and they're using SSID, if they don't know the difference between SSID and DCID, I don't know if they need to have importing rights. You need to make sure that you're training your users to fidelity if you're giving them access to be able to import this data in, because it can cause severe trouble with your tables if they're importing in wrong information. So we've got to find the DCID. So let's walk through how you would go through and pull that DCID. So I'm going to go to Data and Reporting. I'm going to go to Exports, and I'm going to go to Data Export Manager. Actually, before I do that, because I don't want to pull for my whole student set, you can make your student selection. So let's say I wanted to do this for the seniors. I can make 12th grade be my current selection and have it for everyone. I don't want to make that big of a spreadsheet as well, so I'm going to pick a few students. I'm going to pick Mickey Mouse. Notice I'm clicking on the plus, not on the name, to add them to the current selection. I am going to pick Wednesday Addams. Oops. Just to give me a few. Adams and Luke Skywalker. So I'm going to pick these 3 students. Whether I'm doing 3 students, 100 students, the whole school, the whole district, doesn't matter. You make them your current selection. I need the DCID on these 3 students so that I can then do that import to introduce this data to the table. So I'm going to Data and Reporting, Exports, Data Export Manager. And also keep in mind, everyone, I do have the chat open, so if y'all have any questions as I'm going through this, please feel free to pop them in chat and I'll be happy to answer them along the way. I know when we pull up Data Export Manager for the first time, it always goes a little slow. I never understood why that happens, but once you get in there, it seems to rock and roll. But the first time you pull it up, it does take a minute. All right, so I have my Data Export Manager. So the easiest place to go find that DCID on your students, I choose Tables. I go find Students because it's directly on the Students table. And notice my options. I have DCID, and then I need the identifier because I don't want just a list of numbers. I want to know who these numbers are for. So I'm going to go down here, and I always go pick last first, just so I can have the ID and I can have the name. So I'm going to hit next. Now remember, it says use current selection of students. So I do have my 3 right here that I have selected. Now I can do show records so that I can see these students. So I easily have these numbers right here. Now, if all I had were these 3, I could quite easily do a copy and paste on this if I needed to, or I could actually finish this out, which would be to export it out. So I would hit next, have it how you would want, export it out, and it would bring that file that I could then open. Now it's going to bring it as a text delimited file. You could then change that to a spreadsheet if you knew it had all, 1,200 kids on there, 100 kids on there. You could easily get that. So I'm going to move this one, oops, off the screen for just a second. So that's step 1. You've got to have the DCID on your students. So for whichever ones you're working for, go get that. Now, in this pathway again, it says to build a spreadsheet with 4 columns. So I would literally copy these just as you see here and put them in a spreadsheet, which I've already done here. So I've started this basic layout of a spreadsheet. So the first thing I need are the student's DCID number. So you could copy and paste or create for that spreadsheet. I'm just going to type these in right quick. And 17604. So I have my 3 students. The first one is Mickey Mouse, is the 717. I have Wednesday Addams, which is the 1347, and I have Luke Skywalker, who is 17604. Now, it says there's 3 things that you need to have in here in order to upload this. You need a start date. So let's say that I'm going to put this start date, the graduation pathway date, it's going to be first day of school for this year. So everybody's getting 8/4/2024. You can have an end date. Well, at this point, we don't have an end date for the students because they're all actively going to be on that graduation pathway. So I don't have to put data in here. When we give you these formats to upload the data, it doesn't mean that every single field has to be entered because some might not have dates on them at this point in time, or you might not have data that needs to go in that. You see that a lot of times with the Literacy Act updates, the Numeracy Act updates, where it might apply to one part of the spreadsheet but not others. For whatever you don't want data installed in, you just don't put anything in that column. I also need to know the graduation pathway. Now that's where it says up here that you've got to use your code set ID. So we walk you through the steps right here, which is pretty much the same thing, going into that data export manager, going to the code set table, and then exporting the entire code set table and finding which code set type you're looking for. And in this case, it's graduation pathway. And I typically tell you exactly what to search for in every one of the directions on these code set IDs. So for my code set IDs, it tells me that, for general education pathway, I should use the number 22090. So I'm just going to say that all these are going to be graduation pathway A students. So 22090 is what I'm going to enter for each one of my students. And I've built the spreadsheet. So it takes just that little bit of information to be able to import this in to update a record. So it states in the directions that you need to save this as a text tab delimited file. So I'm going to go to Save As. I am going to swap this from being an Excel to being a text tab delimited file and hit Save. Correct, Paul. I didn't put in the I put it in the end date column. Thank you for catching that. Sitting here talking about end date needs to be blank and put it over there. Let's save that again. Takes a village, y'all. All right, it's saved in there. Now, how do we get this information in? Well, again, in the directions, it says once you have saved it, you're going to now import into the data import manager. And this is how it goes through all of those import instructions that we have. So instead of data export manager, I'm going to come over and actually I'm going to leave data export manager in a tab because we're going to come back to it and I don't want to wait forever for it to load again. So data and reporting, this time I'm going to go to imports, data import manager. And we're going to give it a second to load. So the first thing I'm going to do is go find my file. That's the one that I want to import. So it's going to be that text file here. What do I want to import into? Now here's where you're just going to have your whole list of all of your fields. So pay attention to what we state in here of which one you want to import into. So I give you the table name S_stu underscore graduation pathway and C. So I need to go find that from that list. In alphabetical order, S_stu graduation pathway. And notice this is where you're going to see the majority of all those compliance fields that we have in there. There's your learning preferences for everybody who has to update their digital learning preferences. We're going to choose the pathway. We're going to hit next. Now, if you've mapped according to the exact headers that I told you to put in that spreadsheet, everything should map perfectly for you. You're not going to see anything else. It's going to say put the DCID in the DCID column, put the begin date column into this field, put the end date into this field, put the pathway into this field. Like I go ahead and give you the file name in the structure that you need to go into each one of the fields. So all you would have to do is click next. Now here is where everybody gets confused at. These options right here. First, check to exclude the first row if there's headers. Well, yes, in my file I had a set of headers, so I want to check that box. If a record in the import file matches an existing record in the database, how would you like to record to be processed? You can put do not process or update. Here's where a lot of people get very confused about. Let's say we install this file. And then we decide, oh no, I did something wrong. Like I just installed it for the entire school and I put the wrong start date on there. Okay, I'm gonna go change the file and I'm gonna import it again and I'm gonna choose this option right here of update. Well, let's go through that scenario and see what happens. So it doesn't matter what I'm gonna choose here because I'm not updating anything. I'm doing my first insertion of this data in here. There's also this option, check to confirm that records should be deleted if blank rows exist in the import file. We'll talk about that when we roll back through it again as if we made a mistake. So we're going to go to import. And notice that it says 0 failed, and we skipped the first row because it was the headers, and then I have 3 rows that all say inserted. So it took those 3 records and inserted them into the file for me. So if I were to pop open this and go to Mickey Mouse and go to the compliance screen and look down here in graduation pathway, there we go. Whoop, something happened there. I must have put the wrong code set ID. I couldn't see it in there. So I could add edit. And I would say, sure enough, somehow I missed that code set. So we're going to put that back in there. And why is it throwing me an error? Because I've got two different ones with no end date, which is what we happen to be seeing inside quite a few records. So I'm going to leave this in there because it kind of shows me the messed up data that I would want to show. So let me go back to Data Import Manager. And let's use the scenario of, okay, we messed something up. Maybe I put the wrong start date on everything. I want to put the correct start date. So maybe this should be 8/5/2025 instead of 8/4. Okay, so I have the dates in there. Now, let me go get the right code set ID. So I'm going to go back to Data Export Manager real quick. And I'm going to go back all the way to the tables. I'm going to go to Show All. I'm going to start typing in code set. Now, this confuses a lot because there's code sets and there's code set. You want the code set. I'm going to grab all of these. I'm going to go to Next. I'm going to filter by code type. Graduation pathway. Show me the records. Oh, so yes, so see, I've got different code set IDs in here. So if I want these to be Gen Ed A, the code set ID is 889. So that's what I should have in here. So we're going to go ahead and update that. 889. And there's my code set ID. So let's say that maybe I did that. I realized that, oh, I put the wrong code set ID. I put the wrong start date. I put the wrong something in the original file. So I'm thinking, well, if I just create the file correctly, save it. So I've got it saved, and remember, if you want to, make sure you're saving it as the text tab delimited, but because I still got it open as that, I'm all good. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to Data Export Manager. I'm going to go back to let's get back to the importing screen. So same thing, I'm going to go choose that new updated file, grab pathway. Where do I want to import it? That same thing. So scroll all the way down. Whoop, not too far. S_U. There you go. Graduation pathway. Next. Now here, it maps again perfectly because everything's there. Hit next, and here's where I'm thinking, oh, okay, so this time what I want it to tell it to do, if I've got a record that matches in the file, I want it to update it, right? Because it's going to see that I inserted Mickey a while ago, and I want it to take what I had in for Mickey, and I'm going to change the date, and this time put in the right graduation pathway for it. That's what I'm expecting. Hit import. Oh, it did give me a error. It skipped and it said begin date must be a valid date. Well, notice that when I entered it, it actually threw it over here, didn't go over here because I had a mistyped date inside of here. So that tells me that record didn't go in. I would need to process it again. But then it tells me down here, it skipped the first one because it was the headers, and then it gives me an insert, and you're thinking, great, it inserted and fixed my records. But if I were to go back into Mickey, let's see what it did. Well, Mickey was the second one that had the error, so we're not going to see anything on his. So let's pick a different one. Go back to the student search. Let's look at Wednesday. She was the second one on the list. So let's look at hers, and there we go. We got grab pathway A, and we've got 8/5, and you're thinking, great, until you go look over here. And you go, wait a minute, why do I have 4 entries for her? And why does the other one that I had a while ago, why is it in there? The 8/5, oh, there's the 8/4 with the wrong code set ID. Why did it keep building? Or maybe somebody else was importing at the same time I was importing, and now we have 4 records on there, and we're not supposed to have that many records on kids. We're supposed to just have 1. These don't have end dates. They're overlapping, so we made a mistake. How do I get rid of them? And oh, by the way, we just did this for 1,200 kids across the whole school. Here's where understanding what happens once you do this insertion. When you do these insertions from Data Import Manager off of the original file, remember this file only had 4 columns. It had the student's identifier, so it knows which student to tag this record to, and it has the data in the record. Once this is inserted into the table, it actually produces a record ID. So what I want to do is I want to go into Data Export Manager. I want to go all the way back to the beginning. I want us to look at what happens in that table. So I want you to go to Show All, and I want you to scroll all the way down and go find S_U_ graduation pathway. When we go to that table in Data Export Manager, notice there are a lot more fields in this table than what we actually used in our spreadsheet to import into this table. Let me go ahead and hit the next button so it puts them into kind of a spreadsheet for me. And notice I still have those 3 students selected. I'm gonna hit Show Records. And now I can see, ooh, I'm gonna sort them. I have multiples for 717, I have multiples for this student, and I have multiples for this student. So here's my Mickey Mouse, here's the 4 that I have on Wednesday, and here's the 2 that I have on Luke Skywalker. Okay, well, I've got a nightmare in my data here. How do I fix it? Here's the one thing to remember. All of these columns sit in this table. The only data that we inserted was the begin date and the pathway. And then it tags all these of when it happened, who did it. When you put that record in through Data Import Manager, it created these IDs. So you know how a while ago when we were on, let's go back to Data Import Manager and go back to the page where it shows us the options. So let me just pull that file again and scroll down to the field. When it gets to these right here, if a record in the import file matches an existing record in the database, the only thing that it can use to match that existing record is this ID column right here. Right here, this very first one. If you wanted to go in and say, all right, I need to fix this data, you have a couple of options. Most people are going to go through, they're going to finish this exporting out. So I'm going to hit next and I'm going to hit export. Notice it pulls it as a text file. If I open this file, let me pull it back on the screen for you. It's not really in the format that I want to work in. I really want to work in this in Excel or however you want to pull it in so that it's in a spreadsheet format. So I'm going to close that out. I'm going to go back to my Excel that I had here. I'm going to go ahead and find that file. I'm going to browse, make sure I swap it to all files, and I'm going to go find that export. And yep, let it format it for me. Okay, so here's all of my information. There's the pathway ID, this information, all of this here. Now, there's even some information that we don't use because this is a core table inside of there that we're using for compliance. We're only looking at our state for the graduation pathway, the begin dates, and the end dates. So if you truly wanted to update the data, you would need to go in, adjust it from here, and re-import this file back into the system to make the necessary changes. What if you also created all those duplicates and you're like, I need to delete out what I don't want to have there? So that's what I want to do in my case. I need to delete out these bad records because I shouldn't have been importing that same original file over and over again. All of those that are on that updating student data information is a one-time upload. If you ever need to change the data that you just uploaded, you must always go through Data Export Manager to pull the entire table out, either the whole table or the table for the kids that you have selected, and make the adjustments from that file. So if I know that I need on 717, I should really only have one record for Mickey. So Mickey was 717. So let's just pretend that this is the correct record. If I don't want this record in there, then I am to blank all columns. So I took all of those columns out. I want to keep on 1347, which was Wednesday. She had 4 records. She should only have 1. She should have this 825 record. So I'm going to get rid of this record, delete. I'm also going to get rid of this one right here. Oh, nope, I want to keep the 85. So I want to get rid of the 84. So always pay attention to them. So make sure you're marking the right ones. I want that record gone. So I've got 2. I only want one of them, and they both have the correct information. So you just choose which one do you want to leave. Do you want to leave the one you entered on 922 or the one you entered on 106? So I'm going to get rid of this one. So I'm going to blank that record out as well. And now I've got Luke. He had 2 records. He had one with the 84 date, one with the 85 date. The 85 is the correct one. So I'm going to get rid of this record. So that tells me I've got 3 records. Now, if these are the good ones that I don't need anymore, or I don't need to say do anything because they're correct, I can delete these rows. This is where you have to do some work. So delete this row and delete this row. So now I have configured this file that basically says these, how many records do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 records are all bad records. So maybe it was you multiplied, your 1,200 kids times 3 because you did 3 imports. Then you would go through and find the ones that you need to get rid of for each student, or at that case, it might be just wipe the whole table because we've only done this first year. Take all of them and delete them. So you blank out all the columns except for the ID column, re-import it in so it gets rid of them, and then create the correct file to begin with and re-import in. So I'm going to save this. And again, make sure it is in a text tab derivative. It is. So let me make sure I'm saving this in my download so I can go find it. Yep, replace it. So now I have this file. All right, we're going to go back to Data Import Manager. I'm going to go back. Let's just go, whoops. Oh, I'm clicking too fast for y'all. Go back into Data Import Manager. So I'm going to choose my new updated file. There it is. Again, go find my graduation pathway. Notice this time we're going to have a whole lot more columns to map and displayed. So these are the ones where I have information in, or possibly not. If it's not there and we're not using it, you don't have to worry about it because it's going to kind of create those when we do the import. But the biggest thing is it's got my ID, it's got my DCID, the begin date, the end date, the pathway. Those are the 5 that I really want to make sure that I'm working with. Now I'm going to hit the next screen. And here as well, where I want to make sure if it's got headers, mark it to ignore it. If a record in the import file matches, what do you want to do? Do not process, update, or check here to confirm. So I'm going to check that I want to confirm that if it should be deleted, if blank rows exist. All columns in a table must be present. So you still have to have, that's why we pulled straight from the Data Export Manager, because it's going to give me all the headers in that entire table, even those that we don't use for us as a state. So I have that entire file. I've got that I want it to be deleted, and I'm going to hit import. All right, now I've got some errors, so let's see what happened. Begin date, empty value was not allowed. Pathway, empty value was not allowed. So let's see what I did with my file. I'm wondering if it's reading some kind of data in there, and it shouldn't be. Let me make sure I ain't got some kind of phantom information there. Let's delete again. Save. Let's try that one more time. Go back to Data Import Manager. Grab my file again. Go back to the table. All right, let me make sure I got everything mapped right. Pathway, school ID, still type. Next. Updated to delete. Import. And sometimes you have to refresh. And there we go. I hit my skipped and now it deleted those records. Oh, I realized what I didn't do. I didn't swap it to the updated when I did it just a second ago. That just dawned on me. So make sure that you do that because we are updating. Even deletion is an update inside of there. So it says it skipped the first row and it deleted all those records. So now remember how I was over here on Wednesday's page and had all those bad records? If I refresh, now she just has that one record, which is the correct record that she needed to have in there. Now, the same can go true if you needed to edit any of that information. So if you needed to edit, there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can either, one, export that table out just like you saw me doing here, make the adjustments. When you go to that import page, you can check that box to update it and it'll find that record ID, match, and correct any data. But there's another way that you can do it. So let me go back to my pathway. Let me go all the way back. So I'm back in Data Export Manager. I've got the student graduation pathway. I've got all the tables, the table and the fields here, and I hit next. I'm going to look for these 3 students and I'm going to hit show records. So now, because I just corrected everything, notice I have 3 records here. Now, do you also notice that I have these little pencils right here? This is a security permission. Let's go look in security for a second. Because we can update, if you truly want to update now, deletion, you probably want to do that through an export and doing it with the blank rows. But if you really want to edit what you have in there, for example, let's say you just imported all 1,200 kids and you put the wrong start date in there. If you have in your security user roles, I'm going to go to the user access roles. There are 2 roles that are built into everybody's server that is Data Export Manager Export Access. That's what's going to allow you to do this, show records, next, export it out. But there is also this one right here, which is Data Export Manager Export Edit Access. Sometimes it's a shortcut to go into Data Export Manager and be able to edit directly in there. Think of it kind of like a mini DDA. If you have a role or that role assigned to you or to any of your users, that means they can go into Data Export Manager, query down to the table, and edit anything within that table. You know, I've got the video on how we update standards each year whenever a new set of standards is rolled out, and you'll have to take course numbers off and put new course numbers on for what you associate. It's that same way that I showed in there. So if I know that I needed to maybe just edit 2 kids or all 3 kids, I could click on an individual pencil and update the data in the field and submit it. Or I can say edit all filtered records. So if I had 1,200 kids that I just imported the wrong start date on, then I could come here, hit edit all filtered records, filter for the begin date and say, oh yeah, the begin date should have been 8/06/2025 for all students. Now you can only do one field at a time. Hit submit. And now it updates that one piece of data across all those records. So if you're truly wanting to update something that you have already pushed in through the data import manager on one of the file templates that's walked through in those directions, you have 2 options. You can either come to Data Export Manager, locate that table, and edit it through the fields here. Or if you have to do a lot of editing, you can pull out through Data Export Manager the entire table or the filtered table based on your current selection. Make the adjustments. If you needed it deleted out, you just have to remove all the data in the columns except for the ID of the record. Or if you're updating, you would just update the data in the rows, leaving everything else intact. and re-import that in, making sure that you check the correct information, whether it's to update the record or delete the record in the process. And that's what we need everybody to do, because I guarantee you right now, and I'm working on level data to do a validation, there are a lot of people across the state who have multiple graduation pathways on students right now. If you were to go into your table and then just click on this to sort it by DCID, you would see all of them that are together. Export that out and figure out which ones need to be deleted and get that file imported to delete those bad records out. But that is the appropriate way to use Data Import Manager and Data Export Manager if you are needing to go into data that you already imported and make adjustments to what's been imported or delete out what has been imported. So does anybody have any questions on that? Because I felt that we really needed to show that and talk about that so you could see the difference in, the big thing is these IDs inside of this table that get created when you send that first file in to update that student record. Anyone have any questions? Feel free to put them in the chat, or how many people? We only have a few of y'all on here, so let's do this. All right, y'all should be able to unmute. So if anybody wants to come off of mute and ask a question, I'll be happy to go back through anything.
I do have a question, Stacy. There's no report that you've sent out to confirm or, like pinpointing how many students we're showing as having duplicate entries. We just have to go in and export the data and review it.
I do know we have the graduation pathway enterprise report, and Scott is actually working on an update to it to show students who have multiple pathways entered. So that's going to be coming very soon as well. In fact, I haven't checked.
Okay.
Where's my teams? Let me look at his files right quick and see if he's already put it in there for me. Because I know we talked about that after the office hours. It was either Tuesday or Thursday last week. Let's see what he's got on my list for me. Oh, yep, he's got it. Yep, it's in there for me to approve. So as soon as we get off this call, I will go ahead and add that to the spreadsheet, but it is updated so that cross LEA students were removed and the number of grad pathway entries was added. So 2 updates to that report. So we'll have that shortly so that y'all can go find those.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
No problem. And then you can make those kids, so if you go find all of them in that report, you can make them your current selection, come into here to Data Export Manager, run their stuff, export it out, get rid of those multiple columns, and then import it back in so it'll delete it out. Perfect. Blake, is the start date for the first entry supposed to match the first day of school or when students enter cohort? So because it's the first year we've done it, it should be the first day of school this year or the date that if a parent, because if they do option B, they have to sign a form from the district saying that they do option B. So it should be either the first day of school or the date they sign that form if they've signed it for option B, if that makes sense. That came from Sean over in Instructional Services.
That makes perfect sense. If we went and found what the first day of school was for the date that our upperclassmen entered their cohort, do I need to adjust those dates?
No, you're fine, Blake.
Okay. All right,
yeah, that's perfectly fine. Because technically that's when they, when you start 9th grade, that's when you start that graduation plan. So it's technically been in effect since then. Except for option B, since this is the first year option B, if you had any kids who have gone ahead and chosen option B, the start of this school year would be their earliest date that they could have it since it just started to exist.
Fortunately, we don't have any option B students right now. We do have 2 students on the AAA graduation pathway. But
yeah, I haven't seen many of the option Bs yet. I figure those will start because they have to be in at least 11th grade. So those conversations are being had and should start soon. Any other questions, or do y'all want to see me export and import in and update or anything like that, or y'all think you feel good with what we showed here?
You can go through it one more time if you have time.
Yeah, well, we got all the time in the world. Look, it's only 1:39. It didn't even take me a whole hour to do that, so we have plenty of time. All right,
Thank
so
you.
let's go pick some kiddos. Actually, let's do this. Let's clear my selection and just see what I have, because I just picked with those three, but I'm sure the girls have been adding some stuff in here too. I know it hadn't even muted me yet. I got to stay at least until WebEx like kicks me off and mutes me. Oh, let's go to Data Export Manager and let's just look at the whole table. We'll pretend that we've, stuck an import file in there and have data across everyone. So show all, go find S underscore, nope, AL. By the way, a lot of our like Numeracy Act, non-traditional, Literacy Act, Legislative Act, all those are up here in the S underscore AL, whereas this one was just under S underscore U because it was a core table. But you can do this with all of these. Yes, Marilyn, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade should all have a grad pathway this year. So I'm going to grab that whole table. We're going to go to next. We're going to show records. Oh, yeah, so I've got 41 records here. So here are all of these. I can see, all of this data on kids. So if I wanted to do some edits in here, I could always go in. Now, the kind of big thing with this one is I don't see any names. And so maybe you're like, I could export this out, but Stacey, it's not going to do me good if I don't know what kid is 14. Like I know 717 is Mickey because I've used him every day for the last 5 years to do everything. So what I might want to do, let me go back to previous. You might want to scroll down here because it also tags the students table, is go find, same thing, that last first, and add it to the list. To hit next, show my records. So see, now I know which kid I'm working with. So I got old Andy right here that's maybe got it wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and export this data out. Export. And I'm going to go to Excel so that I can open that file, because it does me no good how it was. So all files, downloads, and hopefully it's that one. Yep, next, and finish it. Okay, so now I've got all the kiddos data right here. Just extend these, whoops. And so I'm sitting here looking at the data and, I've got all my code set IDs. Here are my kids. If I'm like, okay, let's see if we've got some with duplicate data. I could come over here and sort, and I'm going to sort by student's DCID. So you're seeing like, okay, I've got, this kiddo here's got 2 records. Well, they don't need 2 records. So I'm just going to pick one and go, nope, I want all of your stuff blanked out. I can see this kid has 2 records. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to blank one of these out. This kid has 2 records. So I could go through and keep getting rid of all this, and I would just keep going down. And what if I go, oh, well, this kid has 1 record, but oh, that's the wrong date. Maybe that date should be 8/4/2025. Okay, I'm going to leave that there. Maybe all of those are good. Maybe you go through and you find all your adjustments and go, okay, I don't need any of this data. So I'm going to just take all of that out of the spreadsheet altogether so that I'm only working with, these few kids right here that have duplicate entries that I want to go away. And then I want this right here to be updated. Now I want to make sure I take off this column right here that I added on there with the student's name, because I don't need that column saved when I go to save this report to put it back in. Student information category will grad pathway be added to this group of tables. So it's already an extension of the student table, Blake. It won't ever be added directly as a field on the student table, but it's in a child table that is an extension off of the students table.
Okay, sorry, Stacey, I may not have articulated that as well. The category in Data Export Manager of student information. It's
No,
got
that is kind of core in how they do that on there. So I just
Okay.
hit show all and go search through it in the alphabetical list is easiest to me.
Okay.
All right, so
Just curious. I've created a couple of templates out of that student information from those various tables.
Yes, and a lot of people have, like, some people have asked, well, how do I get an import file for like the non-traditional student types, because I want to be able to import into that. Well, y'all, every one of my import files come from me exporting that table out of Data Export Manager first. So I get the headers, and then it's just a matter of filling in whichever headers you want and inserting that data in.
Gotcha.
So for this table right here, now I've got these kids where it had duplicate entries, and it's like, well, I don't really need to touch this one right here. So you can either take them out, or you could leave them in, and just when you choose update, it's going to leave it the same because you're not changing any data in the file. And just to show you that, I want to leave them in here. So now let's save this file. Still is my text tab delimited, and it's export to. I have to look at the name so I can remember what it is. All right, close those down. Come back into Data Import Manager. So I'm going to choose that file that I just saved and go find, I always scroll way too fast, grab pathway, hit next. And again, because I pulled it straight out of Export Manager, everything is just like it needs to be, and I don't have to worry about any of this mapping stuff. Now, exclude the first row. I know I'm going to have files that match because I have the 3 kids that kind of have the same data that I didn't do anything to, and then I have the one that I wanted to update, and then I do have that some are deleted. Even if all I was doing was deleted, this is what I didn't do that first time I went around while I wasn't paying attention. Click update if you have some that you have to delete, because that's technically an update that will show as a deletion in the record. All right, and let's hit import. And refresh. Oh, those are going to be all those rows that I deleted out, so I'm not worried about that. But it did tell me it updated because it just kept the same data, but it's technically an update, so it just reinserted the same data back in the table, but it deleted that row, deleted that row, deleted that one, and then updated row 10, which was that kid that I changed the start date on. So you can see how it will do updates and deletions in the same file if you have that data inside of there. Just be real careful with your forms, because like when I did the, delete, and I just highlighted all this and hit delete, it leaves phantom data in there sometimes. So pull this way and delete the columns or the rows and columns that way, so it truly deletes it out and you won't get all those little error messages, because I did just have 10 lines of data in that form that I inserted in. Look good to y'all? And if I go to any of those kids that were in that selection and go look at their records for these right here, because in fact, who was that kiddo up here? Where's my Aaron Masingo? He's the one that had the one record and all I did was update it. So if I look up Aaron, and I look at his graduation pathway, notice by me importing that back in, because it had the record ID in that file, it did not give another record. It just took the record that was already there and updated that date to 8/4/2025 for me. Twins, since this is the first year for grad pathway, should all students 9 through 12 have the same begin date of the school year? I also had a question from a district where a student transferred to them and the losing school had not entered a grad pathway for the student yet, so they asked should they use the date the student enrolled with them. So the first part we answered a second ago. If it's for this year, they would use the begin date of this year or the date they signed to become an option B student. If they did that for this year, it's the day they get the signature, whichever one comes first for this year. If a student transfers into you and the district that they were in did not put that pathway in before they transferred in, you would want it to be the date of their school year with you, which is the date of their enrollment record at that point. Now, I will say, as y'all all have these in there, as a student transfers from one district to the next, if you have that data in there, it is going to transfer with them. So you won't have to keep putting this in on new students. It's going to come with them. But if some district has not put their data in yet and you have received their student, then you're probably going to have to put it in and it's going to show as an error in official state collections for you. And again, this is just using the graduation pathway table as an example. Back to what Blake was talking about. Oh, Edwina, even for those that have enrolled after the first day of school, is it fine to assign the first day? You probably really want to make it their first of their enrollment date. You can ask Sean. It's not going to mess up anything in the tables for that to be that mismatch. We're not doing any kind of validation on those kind of dates, but it's a matter of what instructional services would want to see on that. I would always just want it to be right, which would be having it the day that they were with me and not before. But then again, if a kid transfers from one school to the next, it's going to be a date before. So in all actuality, it could be a date prior to the first day they're actually with you in a transfer situation. Yep. And that's what I would do for any kid moving forward, Edwina, is when a student enrolls with you, if they don't have it in there, just use that enrollment date. Going back to the whole template conversation, somebody had asked, because I've not created a form on how can you mass enter non-traditional student types on kids, because we kind of end those at the end of every year and roll over, and you need to put a new one on there. Well, you can do the same thing if I go up here to the non-traditional type table. You can grab all the fields for the non-traditional type, come grab the field for last first if you wanted to. Hit next. Now, this is going to show you any kid who actually has non-traditional types in there right now. But in all actuality, you just need these headers. And so if you go to an export and export it out, and then come into Excel and say, all right, let's go find. Go back to my downloads. The non-traditional. You've got all this data, but really all you need to know are what these headers need to be. So you can get rid of all, oops. Playing with me today. Oh, let me share my screen again. Hour mark. So I can take all of these rows because I don't want to touch anything with the non-traditional types that were done last year. Delete that data out and go, okay. If I needed a file import because I just need to import everybody's information for this year, then I'm going to expand that. You know what? I could just do, the easy thing since I'm in Excel format, auto format column width. I don't need the ID because this is going to be a first time insert in, so get rid of that column. I need to keep the DC ID, the end date, the non-traditional type, which is going to come from a code set ID, the start date. I don't need to worry about the when created, the who modified, or any of that. So I'm going to delete all of that. I might leave the first and last name and just populate a list of students so that you know who you're entering this information for. And then right before you go to import it in, delete that column out because all you need is the ID, the end date, the type, and the start date. Very similar to graduation pathway. So if you're ever wondering how you can create your own import file for any of these compliance tables that we have that are these child tables, you can always do it by just extracting that out of Data Export Manager and using that. Any other questions from anyone? I will say this, please make sure you are checking who you have given data import, export, and edit rights to, and make sure that the people that you have given import rights to, that you have appropriately train them on how to do this so that they're not just importing these same small files that I give as the templates over and over again expecting different results, because it's not going to do it. It's just going to cause harm to your tables. But this will show you how to clean it up or train them appropriately to know how to go into the table, make those edits either through the pencil or through extracting it out and importing it back in. and it'll help make your life so much easier. Any other questions? I will send this recording out after it has finished rendering, and we'll put it up on YouTube so that y'all can have it. I'll go ahead and stop the recording so it can start rendering.